So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is... wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I am your co-host, Phil Smith, aka Phil the Filipino, and joining us, of course, is your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And Eric, it is a new era here at the Wait For It podcast. For those of you that are checking out this episode and you're wondering, where the hell is Monday's episode? Well, you should check out our social media posts from this past weekend, and it will let you know all of that as a very, very short story. We have transitioned into a one episode a week format for the sake of our sanity, and so we can focus our efforts elsewhere as we continue to try and grow the Wait For It podcast. So, Eric, excited to be on this next step for us, but also to talk about this movie that you just did not prepare me for. So, a shout out to you for that as we continue to do the international feature, and it will take on a more prominent role as we will be doing it monthly now.
Yeah, so that's the exciting part of it. In addition to all the updates that we're going to be making to our content and really just trying out some new things, really wanting to grow this platform, and we need the time to do that. So again, not going to repeat everything we did in our announcement, but a lot of exciting stuff. And we're looking at doing more video content, as this episode will hopefully show. So again, really exciting stuff. This movie, Phil, I've been preparing you for since we started the international feature series. One of the first things I said was this series was inspired to be able to watch films like Oldboy. And little did I know at that time, that movie, impossible to stream. So it came out to theaters last month in August for us, and we saw it. I can't wait to talk about it.
No, I disagree. You did not prepare me for what happened.
No, I feel like I did.
So no,
I said we're gonna watch it.
This is literally like when you threw me into Attack on Titan as the very first anime for me to watch ever. That wasn't like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh. You know, these wholesome. I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh is not very wholesome, but you know, this is literally the exact same thing. So, but it was certainly an experience nonetheless, and I am excited to talk to you about it as well as our audience. So for any of you brand new listeners, want to welcome you in. Thanks so much for joining us. Returning listeners, as always, thank you so much for your support. So for those of the people that either are brand new, Eric, or if they need a refresher, let them know about what the international feature is all about, and then we will dive into this wild, wild ride.
Yeah, so whether you're a fan of cinema or just looking for an exciting movie to watch, we want to explore foreign content more than ever before. And for that reason, we'll occasionally highlight international gems on the podcast. Again, you heard correctly, this will now be a monthly recurrence on the podcast, which will allow us to open up the doors to many other avenues when we talk about international features. And I'm super excited about that. Today's episode is going to be about Oldboy, the movie in 2003 that you've probably heard of, but many of you have not seen. So for that reason, we'll likely keep things somewhat spoiler-free for the beginning parts of this episode, but we will have to transition to spoilers. We're really excited. We really didn't talk to each other much. I think we left the movies in silence, really. So this is our first chance to really dive into it. You've been warned. We are going to freely speak about the movie, but we'll try to keep it spoiler-free as much as possible at the beginning in the event you haven't seen it and you're interested in our thoughts.
And remember, this movie came out 20 years ago. So if we do spoil something for you, you've had time, so don't completely mad at us. But we are going to be talking about Oldboy, which, as far as the synopsis goes, directed by Park Chan-Wook. After being kidnapped and imprisoned for 15 years, Dae-Su is released only to find that he must find his captor in 5 days. Eric, I didn't realize that this was actually a film that I had seen some clips from. You know, you think about the hallway scene. For some reason, somewhere I had seen the scene early on where Dae-Su is talking to a gentleman on the roof, and then something happens to that man on the roof. I've seen that scene probably on Twitter or something along those lines. I was like, oh, okay, that's what this is from. Certainly a wild, wild ride. And, as some people may know, this did inspire an American version of the film starring Josh Brolin and Elizabeth Olsen, which I heard is not very good. And from the little bit of research I did watching watching like clips from it in the trailer, I was like, boy, this looks awful. So I'm glad I got to see the original first, which I think was not the case for you, as you have seen the American version of Oldboy, correct?
Yes, unfortunately, and I'd rather not spend much time talking about it, but I will use it as a way to segue into my first talking point for this film. The later version, the American version with Josh Brolin, forgettable. Really forgettable. I do remember the twist because of how shocking it is, and that's one of the things that I don't want to spoil for people that haven't gotten a chance to see it. And because it's not widely accessible, we're gonna put a very clear warning on that twist because we have to talk about it. It's the movie, basically. It's what the movie is surrounded by. But I do want to say that the 2003 version, Phil, from the moment I've left the theaters, has sat with me every day, pretty much. Like, it has been something I've replayed in my head. I think about specific scenes from that film, and not only the dialogue, but the acting that is on display. So, I mean, again, I saw the original and I thought it would deeply impact my viewing experience. But if anything, it gave me a greater appreciation to watch essentially a very similar plot, just in completely different directions as far as the end result. And that made me love this film maybe even more than I would have had I seen it without it.
Yeah, like you said, it is certainly an experience that sits with you. And I am very glad that we are in this position where we have been able to watch some films that are way after their initial release, because I couldn't tell you that a 15, 16-year-old Phil would have appreciated this movie. I'd just been like, whoa, this is really weird. Oh, that's pretty messed up. Like, I wouldn't have really dove into the ins and outs of this movie. And cinematography wise, performance wise, I can certainly see why it has held up as well as it has in 20 years, which is pretty crazy. Like, I didn't really feel like I was ever watching a movie that was 20 years old. I mean, we see movies that are 10 years old that don't look halfway near as good as this. So there are certainly some parts of it where I think it's a little jarring, but that's on purpose, as far as what's going on. There are some parts, just to kind of simplify it, they're a little weird. It's a kind of a weird film, but everything, the way that it ties together, and again, the performances are really something that's going to stick with me for a very, very long time. And it's something, again, it's unfortunate, but also I think a good thing that it's not widely accessible, because seeing it in a theater was on a big screen. I'm very, very happy that I was able to do that.
Yeah, walking away from this movie, it is one of the, and I don't think that you share this sentiment, but this is one of the best top 25 films I've ever seen. It's one of the best movies that I've ever watched. It really is great. It definitely has its flaws, and it is jarring. I will say that, but I think this movie is just an absolute masterclass in filmmaking. And I think that the cinematography alone from this film and the iconic imagery, and a lot of people talk about this movie as like an inspiration to action, but it's not really an action movie. The director, we heard in the kind of interview at the end of the showing, which was remastered to its credit, to your earlier point about the quality, but the director specifically was like, yeah, this is, it's a lot of violence, but it's kind of like a comedy. And I was like, I don't think we would list this as a comedy. It was funny at points, but Jesus, it was a ride. So in a very similar way to how I like other films, it has a little bit of everything, and it does those things at a very high level. And I think that's what I like the most about this movie is it juggles all these elements, and for the most part, it lands.
Yeah, and I brought this up after we had seen the movie. It was we had very recently, I think within the last year and a half or so, played a game called Sifu. And there is obviously now that we have seen Oldboy, Sifu very, very much took a lot of liberties as far as honoring Oldboy. And like you said, it's not necessarily an action movie. Certainly wouldn't categorize it as a comedy. Just a really, really mind-bending film, again, when it comes to everything that happens to this main character, to both characters that we focus on. I don't know that I would, again, like you said, I wouldn't put this in the top 25 films that I've ever seen, as far as like how much I loved it, but I do think it is one of the best films I've ever seen as far as how it was made, like you said. I couldn't sit here and tell you that I want to see it again because of how psychologically damaging the story is, but I think that's a good thing. Like there are films, there are movies, there are TV shows, there are video games experiences that you don't necessarily want to experience again and go through again, but you recognize that they are that is something special in the moment. Like we talk about that with The Last of Us Part 2, right? We don't ever want to go through that again. I could 100% sit here and say that if you have not seen Oldboy, you are doing yourself a disservice, while also saying, I don't think I want to watch it again.
No, it's understandable that you say that. And, I don't want to put this label on you exactly, but I do have to mention it because there is another film in Park Chan-Wook's filmography that I think will probably make its way around again an international feature. It's called The Handmaiden, and I do want to see that. But I'm worried about that because we also watched Decision to Leave, which was his most recent work. And again, not a label I'm going to put on you necessarily, but I don't know that you love that this director's work specifically and appreciate it in the ways that I do, which is totally normal for, you to have a director that you like or a director I like. We're both big fans of Parasite, for example, and the direction there, Okja. But this particular director, I think there's just, and he is a very interesting director. Like just Decision to Leave and Oldboy alone, I don't blame you, but I think that has to do with it a little bit. I think I just appreciate the direction of these films a little bit more than you do.
Sure. And you said that with, I think, like Wes Craven, right? I think that you're not a big fan of like Wes Craven films,
I just never got into it. I don't know if I'm the biggest fan, but for the little bit of work I've seen, I've never been like, man, I can't wait to see that Wes Craven film. Right. But I know a lot of people do. And again, they just like that style. I just haven't gotten into it or haven't seen the movie to get me into it.
Yeah, and I think Decision to Leave is probably the one that we have watched that had where we were probably furthest apart on. And by no means did I not like completely like unenjoy that movie. It was just, as far as what we have seen throughout this series, it's the one that kind of left me the most underwhelmed. So yeah, I do think it is certainly a stylistic choice that's not necessarily 100% meshing with me, but it's not going to prevent me from seeing any more of his work. Like if you were to come to me and say, hey, this is another film done by this director, by Park Chan-Wook, then I'd definitely be game. And that's what this whole series is about, So yeah, that's a very, very good point. I'm glad that you had pointed that out. It is when I was a little nervous in the very beginning of the film where they they give you the warnings as far as the violence and everything like that. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, I don't think it was too bad violence wise, except for maybe a couple of parts.
I'm sorry.
I listen, you know how I am with certain things. I think there's just a threshold where just I cannot handle it. And I didn't reach that threshold. It's certainly very, very violent. And also, as it mentions in the film, if you like octopus as a live creature, seeing it and enjoying it, living and breathing.
Let's just say if you like any aquatic animals.
Yeah, probably some kind of invertebrate probably that swims in the ocean. Probably not for you. Quite the scene. But yeah, I think if you worry, like, I'm probably the most squeamish person you will ever meet, and there were really only a couple times where I was like, oh God, that was really, really rough, to the point where like I had to close my eyes or anything like that. Never at any point did I do that. So just to give people, again, who have not seen it, who might be a little bit worried about that because of the violence, just give you my point of view.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that. And I guess that kind of gets summed up a lot from this movie, and it has to be spoken, is that one shot hallway scene from Oldboy. What did you think about seeing that for the first time? I had actually gone and seen it on YouTube when I saw the, unfortunately, Josh Brolin remake. Jesus, what a difference in quality that alone. That's honestly what made me want to watch the original so badly, because it was just a stark difference. What was your kind of view on that? Because this has been taken and influenced so many series since 2003. You mentioned Sifu in the gaming. We could mention Daredevil in, the Marvel universe. What did you kind of think about that one shot? And did you kind of feel that, wow, this is where it started? Like, this definitely made an impact in cinema.
So you're saying Thanos didn't have a good hallway fight scene?
You would think he would. Wasn't great. You should check it out, and
I'm gonna look it up.
It's not great. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just not the Oldboy scene from 2003, which is, again, one of those scenes that has sat with me and I'll probably never forget.
I guess that is one of the things that does make me wish that we had seen this earlier, because it would have made us more appreciative of Sifu, of Daredevil, things such as that. And yeah, like you said, as far as the impact it has had on cinema and to watch it play out, I was literally, I don't know if, I can't remember, maybe it was internally, but I don't know if I externally was smiling, but I was like, this is fucking awesome. Like, this is so cool. And yeah, it was pretty brutal as far as the what was happening and with the hammer and everything like that. But it was a moment of just pure, like, you're rooting for this character, even though he's kind of a shit, like he's kind of a turd, but you're just watching him mow through all of these guys, and it is a sight to behold. Again, the movie itself obviously is something that needs to be seen, but this scene in particular is what's going to stick with me the most, outside of the twist, obviously. But it was really, really cool to see. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of like it had the opposite effect on me as the Akira bike scene. Like when we watched Akira, which, I didn't really enjoy, but seeing something that I did have a lot of recognition and love for was pretty cool. And I think the director, Eric, said, that they did that in one take, and they didn't let the actor know that they wanted to do it in one take. So he just, because of his pride, went through it all the way. I mean, we have to shout out the name of the actor specifically, just to Choi Min-sik. Absolute badass in that scene. It was quite something to see. But yeah, like I said, one shot is pretty wild.
Yeah, and again, a scene that sticks with me forever. And Phil, I think we've talked a lot generally about the film, so I think this is where I'm going to kind of put that warning out there for our audience. If you have not seen the film, this is going to be your official spoiler warning. We're going to speak pretty freely about the film, and it's going to lead into the twist of the film, because Phil, the main character, is trapped for 15 years, and then in the next 5 days has to find his captor, as you mentioned in the synopsis. And I've got to say, and I don't know how you felt, but the character, Lee Woo-jin, one of the most maniacal, evil characters, I think, that I've seen in cinema, in movies. And it's just kind of from everything from the performance to the motivations, and obviously the twist, which we're going to talk about here, we'll probably transition into. What did you think about his performance specifically? You did mention, obviously, the amazing performance of our main lead, but again, I think every film, and you know this about me, every film needs a good villain, and man, this film has one of the best.
Yeah, and that is actor Yoo Ji-tae, and I think there's something about a villain on a smaller scale that's always very, very maniacal and leaves just a mark, because this particular antagonist isn't really hurting the rest of the world, right? No one is in danger outside of the two main characters, the two characters we spend the most time with. Nothing like that. The people don't have to group together really to stop them. Well, I mean, one person out in his circle was very much in danger and paid the price for it. But there is something about somebody with just a raw, unbridled vengeance that's very, very terrifying. And I think the thought that somebody who has essentially unlimited resources could do something like this to you, right? Like, not to the extreme scale, but like, I always think of this is going to be really weird. Like, if you pissed off a billionaire, you could just disappear, right? And no one would have the resources to figure out what happened. And that's kind of what's going on here, right? Like, it's incredibly chilling, and to have it, and also a nonchalantness, right? Like, he didn't give a shit about anything that the lead could have possibly done to him or anything like that. Also, somebody that's 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of every single move. Absolutely terrifying. And definitely a big part of that film, because we have such an appreciation for villains, antagonists, and everything like that. Yeah, he certainly brought the movie up to a whole nother level, because it's again something that's not outside of the realm of possibility, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, it then transitions us to the twist, right? So let's talk about that. His motivations is that, Dae-Su saw him and his sister basically taking part in some incestual activity, and that led to her death. So he gets imprisoned for 15 years, and through hypnosis and a sequence of events, gets him to sleep with his own daughter as a form of revenge. The reveal to that, Phil, again, was spoiled for me in watching the remake, the American remake. What did you think? Because when I saw the light bulb go off, all I heard you go was, "Oh my God."
Literally, that's exactly what I did. I know it was a little bit different. The tone was a little bit different. Those are the words I said, but I said, "Oh my God," which is totally different from what you just said. Because when you figure it out, and it's so hard in this day and age, I think, for us to for any film, any TV show to pull that off, and for it to happen in a 20-year-old film, I was baffled, because I really, there is not really any indication of what he is so angry about, why he could have put him through this. And once it all comes together, it's mind-blowing. It is on par. It's probably a top 5 twist that I have ever seen in cinema, TV, whatever it may be. And yeah, that's when I had gotten angry at you. Definitely when I got pissed off, because, like, once again, you had not prepared me properly. And it is, man, yeah, like, I would like to hear what other people thought about it when they figured out. It's a bummer that you had seen the American version. It would have been funny to see how we would have both reacted if we both learned it for the first time in real time. I would have liked to see that.
Yeah, and in the American version, again, it was just as sick of a twist. And I did feel bad afterwards, because the twist is pretty jarring. But what happens to our main character and the undressing of that character in real time, and just the evilness, like at the end of that whole sequence, playing that tape when he presses the button, just a real dick move. All of that happened, I felt bad for you, because I wasn't prepared. Like, I've never watched a character get undressed like that in front of us, as far as their morals, their personality. Like, everything changed and became cranked up to the 100th degree. Like, it's absolutely crazy what happened in that sequence, and it was almost more jarring than the reveal itself for me. And that's because I knew it was coming. So I gotta say, Phil, like that's really the part that I felt bad about, because I looked over, I was like, wow, this is heavy, and it's not helping my case for this series, which is just giving you a bunch of heavy films to indulge, but they're so good. Like, you gotta at least give me that.
It's a great film, and we'll talk about what we gave it on our Letterboxd grades. I want to see if maybe yours has changed from the night of, because we did talk about what we gave it on Letterboxd. But yes, and again, we are in the spoiler part. So, and then for him to just off himself afterwards was like, dude, you had been waiting since you were a teenager for this moment. He got what he wanted, and that was it. He felt like he had nothing else to live for, which is just crazy. So yeah, to hit that button and for that to happen, and then for Dae-Su to, like you said, just completely give in. And that is that's definitely one of the tougher moments, was when he pulls out the tooth. The thing is, like, you don't really see, like, a lot of this stuff is happening off camera, like the really, really brutal stuff, which is nice. I don't want to say nice, which makes it a little bit easier to digest. I'll put it that way. But yeah, for him to just admit defeat, he's done, and then there's nothing he can do to get back at this person who has made his life miserable over the last 15 years, because he took care of himself. Now there's literally nothing else he can do. His life is what it is, and now he has to live with what he has done forever. And it's pretty fun. It is the Cartman making you eat your parents times infinity. Like, it's way worse than that.
Okay, that's a pretty good comparison. Yeah, him cutting off his own tongue was
tongue,
jarring.
Yeah, not tooth. Yeah, tongue. Yeah, there was a tooth point, but not that point.
Honestly, and it was the tooth part that I was surprised didn't really kind of like throw you off, because again, your thing is with like bones, and I didn't know if like a tooth was consistent with bone.
We've seen teeth ripped out in like other films, I feel like, and I'm just and they didn't even really show. You could hear it, but
yeah. But again, great film. I think this is a great opportunity for us to start to wrap up and talk about our Letterboxd grades. So, Phil, why don't you go first? Because I definitely have made a slight change since watching it.
Sure. And for Rotten Tomatoes, we'll give you guys that first here. 83% certified to fresh tomato meter score and a 94% audience score. I would be interested to go back and see how many of these reviews are recent and how many of them, have popped up over the years. In the moment, and it is still where I have left it, is 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. Again, I don't think it's going to be a film that I'd want to see again. Maybe to watch it with somebody who has never seen it before, but not an experience that I am ready to willingly go back into right away. But it is a 4 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, so for me, I gotta say, I also walked out initially giving it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, but every day the movie has sat with me. This is a movie that I really thought the next day even, I was like, it's a 4.25. Like, it can't be a 4. And then the next day I was like, is a 4.25 even big enough? 4.5 is where I'm landing. I would even argue I could go up to 4.75 if Letterboxd allowed me to. But a 4.5 is the rating I landed on. Not a perfect film. And I feel like giving out 5 stars seems easy, but there's not a lot of movies that really fit that description, which is why I didn't say it's one of my top 10 or even top 15 favorite movies of all time. But I think 4.5 is like the lowest I could possibly go, and there's room for me to grow more into it, into a possible 4.75 when it comes down to rewatches, which I don't think I'll see this film again, but I can't promise I won't. Like, it's that good for me.
Yeah, it's not really a, hey, let's invite your friends over and have a movie night kind of movie.
This is not your name RRR territory where I
don't
hold
do
like
that, please.
Yeah, I don't hold like movie sessions.
If you are on a first date, please do not bring your date to Oldboy. Don't pop in. Oldboy.
Especially if it's your daughter.
You'll never see that person, especially if it's your daughter. You'll never see that person ever again. Yeah, that's a good call. But certainly, like I said, and like we have both said, an experience that needs to be had if you are a fan of cinema in any type of way. Just be prepared. We have warned you. The director warns you in the beginning of the movie. And yeah, I'm glad, like I said, glad we saw it. And this is probably on the, probably one of those Mount Rushmore films as far as international feature goes. We have to start talking about that. What belongs on that Mount Rushmore? I think this one goes on there. Even though it wasn't my favorite, this belongs up there.
Good. I'm glad we're in agreement with that. And we do need to start thinking about that, because now with this series becoming a monthly occurrence, it really opens up the door. You know, Phil, we haven't had a chance to talk about this, but as we get ready to wrap up the episode, you know, we be remiss not to mention, like, now we can jump into so many more films, which is a great thing. Number one, the series was every other month, and now we really got to make a commitment. So like, we've already got to start looking ahead to October, right? And in addition to that, I think this will also allow us, Phil, to see more anime-like films, because that's something that I kind of stayed away from because I was doing the Why You Should Watch series, and I'll still be doing that, but I think this will be a great opportunity. Like we did Akira for Late to the Party. I could easily have seen that now being an international feature, right? Something that we watched and we did appreciate, right? And I at least would have recommended people try to watch it to see what all the fuss is about. I think there's a lot of movies that could fit that description, and I'm excited to definitely look into it. Maybe Spirited Away is finally a movie I make you watch and we talk about it. So that'd be interesting.
So we're going to see the Attack on Titan movie.
Yes, that's absolutely.
As far as the Mount Rushmore goes, can we also add Colin Farrell just totally sad that his friend doesn't like him anymore?
Oh, Banshees of Inisherin is 100% on the Mount Rushmore. We love that movie too much.
Don't like it. You liked me yesterday. Did I?
I'll be honest with you.
It's one day. That's how our friendship is going to end.
I really got to start actively looking at my list, because I can't just keep saying that. But I would also potentially say that was also in my top 25. Like I love that movie.
Good. I love it so much. I
feel like way more than most people did. But it's definitely a top 50 film just off the top of my head. Maybe top 25. I love that movie.
Yeah, I think I have a 4.5 on it on Letterboxd. So I love that movie. Go see Banshees of Inisherin if you haven't. Here's what you do. If you're gonna go see Oldboy, and if you're still here through the spoilers, shame on you. But anyway, go see. If you're gonna see Oldboy, go watch Banshees of Inisherin. And that's also not necessarily like the easy, like a happy-go-lucky film, but I mean the Colin Farrell and what's his co-star's name?
Brendan Gleeson.
Brendan Gleeson, so good in that. Just to maybe balance it out, even though it's still a little bit of a sad story. Go watch Banshees of Inisherin afterwards.
Yeah, it'll be a good time.
Interesting night. It'll be an interesting night for you.
I don't know. It's dark in its own ways too. I don't know how good of a decision that would be.
Lots of teeth.
Teeth and fingers.
Teeth and fingers.
Jeez. Well, Phil, we're at the end of our episode here, and this is really exciting stuff. Again, with us being able to do a couple new things on the podcast, I also feel we'll be well prepared and better prepared for a lot of these episodes. Luckily, we got to see Oldboy in theaters a few weeks from recording this, so again, we'll have plenty of time to catch up on next month's and the rest of the year as we move into international feature. Phil, let everybody know where they can find more content from the Wait For It podcast, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah, if you are brand new, or if you just have wondered how you can keep up with us, check out the Linktree link in the show notes. You'll find all of our social media pages. As Eric mentioned, with this change, we're going to be a lot more active on things such as Instagram, TikTok. So make sure you check those out. And if you want to find all the rest of our content, that is also within the Linktree. One great way to support the show for free, you can head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you are listening. Leave us a 5-star review and let us know that we are doing a good job. Getting those reviews in kind of gets the attention of things such as sponsors, but also those podcast apps to let them know, hey, these guys are doing something special. So if you guys want to help us out, that would be very, very beneficial to us. And if you want to support the show a little bit more, such as our patron, how our patron Briar does, Eric will let you know how to do that.
Yeah, and that is a great way to support the podcast, to keep the show running on Patreon. We have additional perks like early access to episodes, unedited versions of our episodes like this one, and a lot of other exclusive perks that you can get at different affordable tiers. You can also give us a support donation at our Buzzsprout page. That's directly through the page that you can do that as well. But like Phil mentioned, a like, comment, share, engagement on social media, YouTube as well. All of those things help. We can't thank you guys enough. And let us know, is there a movie that you would like us to watch that is considered an international feature? You never know. If it's not a sad film, Phil will be very happy that you've made that recommendation.
Please, for the love of God, send me something funny. Send me a comedy. Do they not do comedies elsewhere in the world?
You got to start looking, Phil. I keep looking. It's not as easy. I'm trying my best, but all these films have been amazing. It really opens up our movie palette, and it is a great series that we're excited to continue to do on the podcast. With all of that being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino, and please don't forget, we are now releasing new episodes every Wednesday on the podcast with bonus content on platforms like TikTok, and all you got to do is wait for it.
So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.